Hey y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new to my channel, hello. I'm so happy you are here. If you are a returning viewer, hey boo, hey. Let's get into the obvious real quick. My hair. It needs to be done. And I want y'all to know I was supposed to wash it tonight, but I was like, let me record this video real quick and let me be authentic and honest and give them tired hair so that there's a level of appreciation in our space when I'm giving out fresh curls. Because listen, sometimes this is what goes on. So if you are new to this channel, we are unpacking the gifts of imperfection. As always, you can start here on this video, or you are more than welcome to go to the last video posted or the first video. You can start anywhere in the series. They do kind of build on themselves, but it is not necessary. You can start anywhere in this journey and it'll all be helpful. Today, we are going to be on page 31. I'm going to jump back to the last couple pages, probably in another video, because I think I'll mention something on the page, but it wasn't enough to like have a full video about. On page 31, it's called The Things That Get in the Way. And essentially, Brene is segueing into topics like shame, fear, and vulnerability from the point of view that like these are things that prevent us from wholehearted living. And so we will talk about shame more specifically on Thursday's video, but I do want to share her story that she used to open up with, because I think there are a couple gems in here that I just want to encourage you with. When I was reading it, I was just like, okay, let's look at how we also fit in this story, and also share, like, you know, participate in the dialogue. But she opens up and she says that in 2008, she was invited to speak at this panel. And when she saw the speakers list, it said like 16 of the world's most exciting thought leaders and speakers. And so if you've been watching all my videos, I would like to think that you are becoming a fan of Brene's, right? Dr. Brene. But Dr. Brene expressed in this video, in this in this section of the book, that when she saw the list of speakers, she instantly was like, what the heck am I doing on this list? Like, these people and I don't compare. We are not in the same arena. They are overwhelmingly better speakers, better leaders, just like phenomenal people that you should know. Like, why was I invited to speak, right? And so she calls her best friend. Her best friend says, put your measuring stick away. Love that, because essentially when we are comparing, that's what we're doing. We are sizing up where we see ourselves in comparison to where someone else is. And so we're measuring our worth in those moments. We're measuring our deficits in those moments as well. And we also are assuming that what someone presents to the world, though we have the privilege of seeing it in its perfected state, we don't know what it took to get there. And so we are assuming this person's character and their worth and their entire being based on one opportunity or one space that we are privy to see, if that makes sense. And so, you know, her best friend doesn't really get her to calm down. She is preparing for this speech or this talk discussion for weeks. And then her husband kind of noticed, like, what's up? You're not really being like yourself. And she mentions that she keeps thinking that she's going to bomb this speaking engagement the way she did 5 years ago. And her husband's like, you've never told me about this. Sis, I'm your husband. You never told me that you bombed a presentation. And this is why I really wanted to get into this story, because though it was her introduction to her section, I feel like we can find ourselves in this as well. So this is her husband, her confidant, her friend, her life partner. If you're watching this channel and you're not married and you're not in a relationship, you have those people in your life. And if you don't, I don't want to assume. I'm praying that you do. I'm praying that, you know, that becomes your prayer, that God would send you someone who you can confide in. But I would like to believe that we all have at least one person that we can tap into if we choose to. Okay. And this is important to follow. So I want you to like lock in. She's married. She has a partner that she has decided to do life with. We have friends and people that we decide to do life with. But there is an obvious example here that when things are not going well, or when she experiences shame, when her work doesn't meet her standard, when the finished product is not like pleasing or it is rejected, she's not sharing that in her close quarters, right? And so the first thing I want to say is, if you have to, pause the video. I would like for you to think about one person who you confide in. And I want you to ask yourself, do I tell this person about everything? So me being transparent, I am definitely someone who takes shameful moments or disappointment or even rejection, and I like work through it by myself. I think naturally as people we do that. I think we do not want this to be the center of the discussion. We don't want to have to admit that we were rejected, that the person we might have been excited about did not reciprocate that emotion. The job we applied for, we did not get. That time we were called in the office, it was with HR, so we were fired. Like we don't readily pick up the phone and tell people this. And if you do, I'm proud of you, because that is strength. That is amazing. It means that you are literally getting ahead a lot faster. And I'm going to say this for multiple reasons. So first and foremost, piling on from what we've talked about previously, it means that you're allowing your community to be there for you. And if you're not doing this, you still need to listen in, right? When you put your embarrassing, shameful, hard to talk about moments front and center, you give your community permission to be there for you. Secondly, you put yourself in position or alignment to get what you need. And I love this, like, through this story, because what it's highlighting to me is I always tell my students when we're doing like writing prompts, sometimes I'll put their responses on the board, but before I do it, I give them this disclaimer, like, does anybody want to volunteer their writing sample so that the class can we glean in to your work, and we'll talk about your writing sample, but by way of your writing sample, others can gauge where they are, what they did well, what they could work on, but it means your sample is in a hot seat. And so there's usually always one at this point in the school year, but in the beginning, no one wants to do it. No one wants to be in a hot seat because it literally lets other people know where you are. It means that your deficits, the things that you do well, your strengths, your weaknesses, the things you're ashamed of, become public. But here's what I tell my students all the time. The students who volunteer their work essentially walk out of the room most equipped, because they get direct feedback from me with a quick turnaround. So other students who were so overwhelmed by the shame have a delay in being able to progress, because it means I have to get back to them later that week, later that evening. But the student who is like, here's my work, I don't care where I stand in comparison to others, give me feedback, it literally allows them to collect tools to continue. I hope that makes sense. And so Brene, just like us, had an embarrassing moment, and sis said it was 5 years ago. But it never left her spirit, because what happened was so detrimental that when she was presented an opportunity that seemed to have the same weight, the trauma of it was triggered. And now, because she did not invite her closest community member or any of her close community members in, because I don't even think she told her best friend, not only are they not equipped in that moment because they don't know where the fear is coming from, but now she has to go and recall the event in order to equip them, which means reliving it and having to address it. Okay? So, yeah, I want you to think about the people you're close with and really ask yourself, like, I know I'm eager and ready to tell them when things go well, but how eager am I to call my best friend and say, I got fired today? I was on Tinder and I took a chance and I was rejected. Or, you know, I went on that blind date and he didn't show up. Or I applied for a job, kept progressing in the interview rounds, but didn't make it. My money's funny. You know, I'm just thinking of like different spaces that we are not eager to talk about, but the flip side we are, right? So I got the job. The blind date went well. He swiped in approval, left or right. I don't know which one that is. I forget. I got a promotion. Money came in the mail. These are things we will share without being asked because we're confident in what's going on with it. It puts us in a place where it's like, right? And so that's the first thing. How eager are you to share these moments? So she tells her husband the story. And the story is so interesting because she's at this woman's breakfast brunch. And when she first gets there, the person who greets her instantly sizes her up and says, "You don't look like a researcher." And I'm sharing the little details of the story because I also want to address, remember this section is called the things that get in the way. Now, Brene is talking about fear, vulnerability, shame, things like that. But I want to talk to you about the little foxes that while we're going through this, while we're choosing to activate vulnerability, community, connection, compassion, courage, all of that, I want you to also think about who you come into contact with as well. So she speaks with the person who greets her, and instantly the person who greets her belittles her. And it plants a seed that though she said, the lady said, "Hello, you don't look like a researcher. I'm going to introduce you. I need your bio." "I don't look like a researcher" instantly causes you to go inward. Or even if you present it like, "What do you mean I look like a researcher?" But even if that's not your response, you go inward. Well, what does a researcher look like? What about me do I need to change? How can I look more research-like? And if you don't address the seeds that people plant in very simple conversations with you, they will take root. So my second point is that I want you to be mindful that while we're going through this journey, or while we're trying to unpack these different qualities, you're going to also come across people who could be dangerous to your progress. But I speak to your voice today that you will respond, not rudely, but in a loving tone when necessary, so that certain seeds are not planted in your space. Because when I think about practicing vulnerability and how uncomfortable it has made me, I recognize that when I'm practicing honesty, authenticity, transparency, vulnerability, and I'm really like so eager to make sure this becomes a behavior, there are going to be some people who won't meet this with the right posture, and it can shut me down. And so before she even gets to speak, this woman has shut her down in who she looks like. She knows nothing about her research. She has not read any of her books. She has not listened to any of her talks. She is simply judging what she sees. And so today I just want to speak to the person who struggles in looking like they are enough. And even who feels like when invited into spaces that they don't feel called to, that they're not enough. You are enough. I thought it was so interesting that when she saw the list, instead of her taking on the mindset of, wow, I'm in this 16 list of world leaders and speakers, she instantly pulled out her measurement stick to figure out, how did I make this list? And so I want us to, we have to be mindful to ask ourselves, what am I thinking about? And are my thoughts causing me to go at war with myself? Because that's who I'm with for all the days of my life. And so are the thoughts that I allow partnering with me? Even if I don't feel prepared, what an honor and privilege that someone else would invite me to a panel this highly esteemed. And it should, I'm not saying this is the natural response, but it should stir something in you to be like, bet I was on this level, but this invite just showed me I need to be up here. I'm about to pull out the best works. I'm about to pull out the secret weapon. Like, it should trigger that. Not let me go inward and tell myself why this won't work. So when the lady said that, she just kind of was like, okay. So she says, well, what do you study? She says, I study fear and vulnerability and shame. And so the lady goes off for a little bit and she comes back and she shuts her down again. She's like, listen, at this brunch, we're not talking about those things. People want to know how to. People want to know how to be happy, how to be joyful, how to be loving. They don't want to talk about fear, shame, and vulnerability. This is their discussion. And so Brene, not activating her voice, struggling with shame, being put in a very uncomfortable situation, she decides to comply. And so now she goes to give a speech on a topic in a way that's not original to her. It's not authentic and it's not her voice. She's accommodating an audience, and this was assigned to her last minute. So even if Brene had a plan, she was told 40 minutes before her presentation, no, scrap that. That's not what we're doing. And so she talks about how basically she went up there, she told the story, joy is good, happy is good, we should be joyful, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't her. And so, third point. Oh, I'll just read the quote she said. She said, first her husband said, you are a researcher, but your best work isn't from your head, it's talking from your heart. You'll be fine if you do what you do best. Tell stories, keep it real, keep it honest. And Brene came to this place where she said, oh, here we go. In a very powerful way. Actually, I'll come back to that. So her husband said, you'll do best if you do what you do best. And so I want to tell someone, I think this is my third point. I understand that there's people doing things that you like and you aspire to do and you are inspired by, right? Sometimes even myself, I'll see other writers. So that's a shameless plug. I am a writer. I'm working on my book. And I'm like, I love that. I just love how that person did that. Like, oh my God. And if we're not careful, we'll try to mimic their gift, diminishing ours, diminishing that someone loves how we word things. Someone loves our train of process, our thinking train, process of thought. I'm getting tongue tied. And Brene realized when she tried to accommodate this speaking opportunity that what it did was it took her out of her natural element. And that's not the researcher that she is that she researches the things that prevent joy, prevent happiness, prevent connection. And though people don't always like to hear it, there is an audience who will appreciate it. And y'all, if you've been following all the videos, you can see how these things start to connect, right? Like not having to hustle for your worthiness or even your voice in a space. How when you do what's authentic to you, you belong in the room versus fitting in. Like, it's blowing my mind when I get on here sometimes because I'm like fleshing this out with you all and I can just hear how like everything she's saying connects. And so had Brene at the time had been like, well, that's not my research. Like, I understand that my research it yields joy, it yields happiness, it yields connection. I talk about the stuff people don't want to talk about. That's when I'm in my element. And if your audience cannot appreciate that, unfortunately, I'm going to have to turn down this request. Or I can't change my speech because that would be inauthentic of me. That would be a struggle for me. That's not who I am. My best work does not come out when I'm trying to accommodate. I belong in this space because my research is what you need to hear. So I want to tell someone, very simple, stop comparing, stop accommodating, stop bending. Because as much as there's an audience, as much as there is an audience that does not want to hear what you have to say, right? There are people who will get to my YouTube channel and go to the next channel because I'm not entertaining enough, or I'm not showing enough cleavage, or the stuff I'm talking about doesn't take 20 minutes. As true as it is that there are some people who will have no desire for my channel, I also have to remind myself that there is a pool of people who will sit and eat snacks and chew on what I'm saying all day and night until the next upload. That's where we have to focus our energy. Okay. And so we are at the 20-minute mark. So I want to hurry up and get through the rest of this. She tells her story to her husband that she was struggling to tell him. He was like, don't we have to talk about the hard stuff? She's like, you're right. So she tells him the story. And she instantly says, strangely enough, telling the story made me less anxious. And then she says, love this part. She says, in a very powerful way, owning this story allowed me to claim who I am. And so going back to the opening statement and question, I want you to understand that when we choose to tell our community or the people we care about or the people that we are deciding to trust the very things that we are most ashamed to talk about, you get to claim and own who you are all the more. I am currently walking through this with you all, and there are moments when I'm on the phone with people that I hold near and dear to me, and I can see them. I can see when I want to just draw back. I can see when I don't want to say something, and I push myself during this time with you all to say it, and I feel so relieved when I do, because they blow me away. And I want you to experience that. And once I tell them, I do feel like, man, I can stand here, right? Like, I don't have to be ashamed of this hole in my shirt. It's not a hole in my shirt, but you know what I mean? Like, wait, you mean to tell me that me telling you this embarrassing thing didn't devalue me? It didn't change how you saw me? It didn't, you know what I mean? And so I want to encourage you to tell the story you're most ashamed of to the people who are worthy of it. That is a lot, but that's essentially what we're getting at in this first statement. Sometimes, or most times, the thing that gets away is that we don't even want to connect with people to tell them what we're really struggling with. And so there was another thing that was in here, and I see we're at 22, you guys, but I'm gonna close with this quote. She says, if we want to live and love with our whole hearts, if we want to engage with the world from a place of worthiness, we have to talk about the things that get in the way, especially shame, fear, and vulnerability. We have to be able to tell people that we love. I am afraid because I feel naked right now because I just shared this. I am so ashamed that this happened, because it allows you to claim territory in your relationships and in your space. And if they're the right people, it gives them permission to show up for you. And you are worthy of that. You are so worthy of that. And there's nothing you can tell the people who love you to make them love you any less. I'll see you all on Thursday.